dark haze. Ladies of the night with eyes of red, vampires in the alleys where good men dread, wolfmen howling beneath the pale moon. But justice is coming and coming soon. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us. Secrets they keep, nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. Cryptids themselves, yet they stand tall against the darkness, answering the call for every lost soul, every whispered prayer. They fight for the light in the midnight air. From saloons to graveyards where evil sleeps, they walk among us. Secrets they keep, nightmare hunters with souls ablaze, cleaning up this town through the dark haze. The night is young, the hunt begins. For against the darkness where hope never ends.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Nightmare Hunters Podcast. I'm your host, D.A. Roberts, and as always, I'm joined by my brothers, Jed and Doc. I almost introduced Steve, and I know he ain't here. Robbie Jed Rains and Carry Pocket Doc Davis. Good to have you guys here tonight. But before we jump into the deep woods and the dark hollows, we want to take a moment for our community. And if you guys have a prayer request for yourself, for a family, for a friend, for someone going through a hard time, just let us know. Because we lift each other up around here, and we already got a few folks on the list for this week, and we'll be keeping every one of them in our thoughts and prayers. Pray for these two idiots right here with us, because they've got some things going on, and just kind of keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And we got a few folks in the chat, Miss Lene and Roxanne, and there's quite a few of that actually that have got some things going on, and I know we all do. So just keep them all in your prayers, folks. So gentlemen, how's everybody doing tonight? Anything new going on? Any stories from this week? Anything you guys want to share before we get rolling?
Weather's bipolar.
Well, yeah. Most places get 4 seasons in a year. Missouri gets them in an afternoon on most days.
Yeah. Colorado's pretty much the same. Bipolar.
Unfortunately. Yeah. But other than that, I'm glad you boys could make it. I'm proud you boys are here, and we got a good one for the folks tonight. I think this one might ruffle a few feathers, and that is intentional. And there's a reason for that, and I think you guys are gonna kind of get the feeling for that here in just a second. But tonight is episode 412, the Hidden Corridors, American Subterranean Highways, the Continental Pathway. Hiding in plain sight. So tonight, before we get into the investigation, we need to address something that's been circulating online. A video claiming to be an AI study proving a unified extra-dimensional Bigfoot species moving through portals across the United States. It's been shared everywhere, and a lot of you sent it to us asking what we thought. So let's start with just a little bit of clarity. No such Google DeepMind study was ever completed. This isn't a real study. It isn't AI research, and it isn't science. It's a content farm compilation dressed up with graphics and buzzwords. No methodology, no data set, no peer review, no transparency, just a string of BS claims engineered to go viral. And more importantly, it doesn't reflect anything we do here on this channel. The Nightmare Hunters has never relied on sensationalism. We don't chase interdimensional theories. We don't lean on portals, magic, or any of the hokum that this video tried to pass off as any kind of analysis, because we don't need to. The real world is strange enough. What we do on this show and what we're doing tonight is grounded in, well, it's grounded in terrain, biology, acoustics, ecology, and even forensic logic. We build our episodes from ranger reports, search and rescue logs, geological surveys, acoustic recordings, and thousands upon thousands of witness accounts that line up in ways that this video never even attempted to understand. And if you appreciate that approach, if you value grounded investigation over sensationalism, take a moment to like, subscribe, share, and join the channel. It helps the show, helps the algorithm, and it helps us keep producing the kind of work that cuts through the noise. Because when you strip away the noise, when you ignore the portals and the pseudoscience, and when you follow the evidence, and I mean the real evidence, something far more compelling emerges. Yes, you guessed it, a pattern. We look for those patterns. A pattern that stretches across the United States. A pattern that connects the cave systems, ravines, disappearance clusters, and acoustic signatures into a single coherent structure. Not a supernatural one, not an extra-dimensional one, a geological one, a biological one, and a behavioral one. A network of hidden corridors carved by the land itself and used by something adapted to the dark. So tonight, we're going to map those corridors, we're going to follow the echoes, and we're going to show you the continental system hidden in plain sight. So hold on to your hats, folks, buckle up your seatbelts, grab your favorite blanket and a cup of hot chocolate, as Doc takes us into segment 1.
All right, so terrain is a factor. So the land remembers, long before people mapped the forest, before the highways cut across the hills, before towns and counties and borders existed, the terrain of North America shaped the movement of every living thing that walked, crawled, or hunted across it. And in places like the Ozarks, the Appalachians, the Rockies, the Northwest, the land still dictates movement in ways most people never noticed, but something else might. Now, this segment southern Missouri Ozarks, where the hills rise and fall like frozen waves, and the slopes are steep, the hollows deep, and the ravines cut through the land like scars. And anyone who's spent time here knows that the terrain isn't just rugged, it's directive. It funnels sound, it channels water, it shapes wind, and it forces movement into predictable paths. And this is where the first piece of our theory begins to take shape. Years ago on this show, when we first discussed how terrain influences wildlife corridors, we talked about how deer and elk and black bear and mountain lion all use the same natural pathways of ridgelines, the creek beds, the saddle points, ravines. And we've also noted that the Bigfoot sightings overwhelmingly occur along these same pathways. That wasn't speculation, that was pattern recognition. And when we cross-referenced these sightings with USGS topographical data, something else emerged. The sightings weren't random. They were clustered in places where the terrain created natural choke points, areas where movement is forced into narrow corridors by cliffs, steep grades, or impassable thickets. And this is where the logic begins. If a large, intelligent, elusive primate exists in North America, something adapted to avoid humans, it would use the terrain the same way every other large mammal does. It would follow the paths of least resistance. It would move through ravines and creek beds and low-lying corridors, and it would avoid open ridges and exposed slopes. It would stay in the shadows of the land, and that's exactly what the data shows. Because in the Mark Twain National Forest, ranger reports from 1998 to 2023, and these are from Internal Freedom of Information Act released logs, it describes unidentified movement and large bipedal silhouettes in the same ravine systems where the BFRO reports clusters. In the Smoky Mountains, the search and rescue teams have documented unexplained auditory contact, knocks and pops and echo responses. In the deep hollows where sound travels for miles, and in the Pacific Northwest, timber crews have reported heavy bipedal movement in the same drainage systems where wildlife biologists track elk migrations. Different states, different ecosystems, different terrain logic. But when you overlay the sightings on top of the terrain maps, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. There's Bigfoot sightings that follow the land, not the roads, not the towns, and not the human footprint, but the land itself. And this is where the idea of the corridor theory first emerged on this show, and not from folklore, not from speculation, but from the simple observation that the terrain itself creates predictable pathways. And if something isn't using those pathways, it would appear in the same places again and again. And that's why the Ozarks matter so much. That Ozark Plateau is one of the most geologically complex regions in the United States of America, or in North America. It's a labyrinth of ridges and hollows and sinkholes and ravines, and it's a place where the land folds in on itself, creating natural channels that run for miles. It's also a place where sightings and sounds and encounters have been reported for decades all along the same terrain features. And it isn't mysticism, it isn't interdimensional, it's just geography, plain and simple. The land shapes the movement, and the movement shapes the patterns, and patterns reveal their behaviors. And those behaviors, consistent, repeatable behaviors, y'all have heard Robbie say this too. That's what science is. It's consistent and repeatable. It's the foundation of biology. When you understand the terrain, you understand the first piece of the puzzle, and you understand why sightings cluster where they do. You understand why regions produce more encounters than others, and you understand why the Ozarks, the Appalachians, the Cascades are hotspots. And if you understand why the idea of a subterranean highway, superhighway isn't fantasy, it's a logical extension of how the land itself is built. The terrain's the first clue. That's the first constant. It's the first undeniable factor in this entire theory. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because all we're looking at is patterns.
Now, let me bring that map back up again. Let me show that.
Bobby, what's that you always say? Repeatable
and identifiable and observable.
And that's what it seems they've done, recognizing all these patterns.
And you guys are familiar with this map. We've showed it in the past. This is the top part of this map is the missing 411 clusters, and beneath it is the map of known large cave systems. Now you can see where my cursor's moving. That's the Ozarks. That's the Ozarks Plateau right there. And this over here is the Mammoth Cave System leading all the way up into Maine. Now, I've got another map for you that I think you guys are going to like. Even better, I showed it briefly before. This map is not some document that has been produced by a cryptozoologist to try to prove a point. This map comes from the United States Geological Survey. This is a map and type and shows the types of the cave systems. Now, if you look at this map, you will see that there are distinctly different types of cave systems. Now, if I can zoom in on this, I'll try to bring this up a little bit. It actually tells you what they're made of, what each of these different cave structures are made of. But let me zoom back out a little bit. And you remember when we said that the theory, they had a theory now that the Mammoth Cave System extends all the way to from Maine to southern Texas? Well, this map from the U.S. Geological Survey backs that up. You look at all these caves in Maine and how they trickle down and join the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail comes down, it joins up with the Mammoth Cave Systems, which all goes all the way up into the Great Lakes. It also connects to the Georgia Cave System, which connects down here to the Florida Cave Systems. Now, then you come over here to the Ozarks region where that connects. That connects to cave systems that run down into Texas, Arkansas, down into southern Texas, across into New Mexico, and this section right here. This one is very important, folks, because the book that I was talking about and the show we did last week about the Stenole, this is the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in New Mexico. Look at the cave systems under the Sangre de Cristos, and they run all the way up to right here, where you guessed it, the young fellow at the bottom of the screen. This is where he lives. All of these cave systems are absolutely riddled. Now, I live about here. You can see on the map, I live about there, in the heart of all that massive cave network. And right over here is the area where Robbie lives. Look at all these caves. This isn't a theory anymore. We've got concrete evidence from the U.S. government to back it up. And I'll bring up another thing. These are the number of reported Bigfoot sightings by state. Now, yes, a lot of these up here in the Pacific Northwest, but they get a lot more reports than we do. Missouri says 154, with Illinois having 296. This map was built off the BFRO's website alone, not off of all of the other websites that come from like the ECBRO, the Gulf Coast. I mean, there are literally dozens of Bigfoot groups. This map was built off data from the BFRO alone. So you can take that with a grain of salt. Of course, here again is the super clusters and clusters from the David Paulides. Here's another one. This map not only includes cave systems, but sinkholes. The red being sinkholes. So if you count sinkholes and caves, pretty much the entire state of Florida is part of the highway. And most of Missouri. All the way up into the Great Lakes region through Iowa, across into Kansas, a big chunk of Texas, right up through the heart of New Mexico, all through Arizona, Utah, and parts of Colorado. And then look at Nevada, and then out here into California. Where all these superclusters are exactly lining up where these major cave systems and sinkhole systems are. You've got to be blind to not see it. Boys, what do you think?
Robbie, they have caves around y'all?
Well, I mean, it's not like out in Missouri with DA, but there are caves. It's just not as concentrated. But yeah, look at that last map he brought up down towards the middle part of the state. There's a good bit of them. But there are caves up here, and obviously throughout the Appalachians, they're all over the place.
Yeah. I didn't know the concentration there.
That's South Carolina right there, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that cave system runs from Florida through South Carolina, North Carolina, up into Maryland, reconnects with the Appalachians. So you've basically got a massive highway system that circulates for all intents and purposes the entire eastern seaboard.
I was going to say that's a big eastern seaboard. It looks like
it may not get to well, over here it does, but it may not hit the coast quite up in this area. But it's all through the center.
Yeah.
So there are very few places on the eastern seaboard they couldn't get without even being seen.
Well, we've said it on the show many times that us. It's not speculation because there's so many cave systems in the U.S. that we called it, and the rivers that flow underneath there. What didn't you say that they released whenever you were a kid? They released it, the
marker dye in Bennett Springs. They released it in Bennett Springs State Park. It was early 70s. I can't remember exactly what year, but they released a radioactive isotope marker dye into the spring, and wanted to monitor it to see where it came up. And stations all over the country, all over the continent, were looking for this particular frequency of marker dye. And when it came up in central Alaska.
Right. So I mean, that right there, like Robbie was saying, there's caves around there. Are they as deep as the ones that are on the seaboard? I don't know, but I think all that stuff's connected to me. I mean, what do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, we speculated that the Mammoth Cave system could go all the way down into Mexico. We already know that it goes from Maine to New Mexico, but there's speculation that it could go further all the way into Mexico itself.
Well, those USGS maps don't show into Mexico. Let me bring that map back up. That USGS map does not. Oh yeah, we've probably, considering how much is on here, we've probably explored 1.5% to 2% at the most.
Well, and also
we speculated. We're not saying it has. We speculated that it could go that.
Yeah, they're just estimating when they say that because they have no idea.
And here's
look at this. Look how much there's here in Texas. I don't think they stopped because of the Mexican border. The USGS just doesn't have data from Mexico.
Well, here's something else I was just thinking too. If you know if you're one of these creatures and you know how to navigate under there, well, yeah, it may not be a major cave system like like up where you are, Robbie, or out where I am, but the back roads, so to speak.
Yep.
To get where you need to go. The back roads, so you're going to know the routes.
And Doc, looking at the caves around your area, as long as those caves could get them close to the Rockies, a cryptid could vanish into the Rockies and never be found.
Oh, dude, easy. I mean, and like not around my house because I live on the freaking plains. About the only thing in the earth around here is a bunch of gopher holes. But
yeah, but those caves extend out into the plains.
True, they do, because there's this place out here. That's what I was about to say. Out here, there's a place called the Painted Mines, and it's about 15 minutes from my house. And there's some openings there that they say, don't get up in there, things like that. But I guarantee you that if they follow those, they'll go right back up to where that way. That's west, Manitou Springs, and all the going up in the foothills of the Rockies, where all those major caves are. Guarantee you.
And then when you start getting into the rougher terrain, you've got all those ravines, creek beds, and low corridors, hidden valleys and arroyos. It doesn't take a genius to know that even the animals, the game animals, use those.
Well, look down near where you grew up. There's stuff down there. Down in Cimarron and Taos and all that area, 100%.
Well, that cave system, it goes right under the Sangre de Cristos.
Yep.
I mean, the USGS map shows that. I mean, the cave systems are far more extensive under the Sangre de Cristos than I ever thought they were.
Well, I believe they're out here, and like we've always said this years and years ago with the David Polite stuff. When you overlay those maps with the disappearances and the cave systems and the Bigfoot sightings, I mean, like you said, there's a pattern there, and that's hard to ignore.
I'll bring that map up again. Here we go. There's your pattern, Doc.
There you go. We've talked about that for how many years?
Oh, last at least 3 or 4.
So, I mean, it is definitely there.
And everywhere there are large clusters of caves, you see large clusters of sightings. That's just, unavoidable.
Which is also another thing, another point to make. People are like, well, we don't see them that much around here, right? Because there's freaking caves. That's kind of where
they got places to be.
That's kind of where they go hide or move about, so they're not getting seen. Right.
Well, with the Mammoth Cave system, from that look of that map, if it connects to those Texas caverns, that means it clearly goes into Mexico. Even though we didn't have data, that massive cave system didn't just stop at the Rio Grande.
Right.
I mean, even people don't stop at the Rio Grande down there. That water's shallow enough to wade across.
Yeah, they're like, well, sorry, it ain't like the Bigfoot's gonna go, the creature's gonna go, oh, sorry, this is the border, can't go any further.
Yep, can't cross there.
Can't cross there. Yeah, just because the data ends there from the USGS, that's just because our territory ends there. So yep. I guarantee you it's a lot deeper.
And I think that the Ozarks is basically like a massive hub. I think that's where so many of those different cavern systems intersect. I think that's why we have such a wide variety of weird sightings here, because I think that's as they're transversing the country, going from one part to another, this is a spot where they all intersect. And there's so much game and fish and water here. Why wouldn't they make this a supply point?
Yeah. Well, there's a ton of stuff out there. Well, it's like when we were at LBL.
Thank you, Larry.
Robbie and I were saying the same exact thing out there. What do you have out there, Robbie? I mean, we were talking about that at LBL there at Mount Pleasant. You got plenty of cover. You got plenty of water.
Plenty of water, plenty of game,
Yeah.
plenty of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me bring this map back up since you mentioned LBL.
And like Wyatt just said, you're basically talking about an underground interstate system, pretty much.
Essentially, yeah, superhighways.
Yeah.
Now, you guys were just an LBL.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember my geography correctly, LBL is somewhere about here.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah. If you go up, because that's Tennessee, go up just a tick.
Oh yeah, Tennessee, Kentucky. Oh, it's right here where all these sinkholes line up.
Imagine that.
Yeah, shocker. So right about here is where it would be.
Crazy, ain't it?
No wonder they got so many sightings there. And that same branch goes all the way up into Illinois, up into the Shawnee National Forest, and then all continues on up to the Great Lakes.
Wow. Okay. So look up there in northern Michigan. All up in that area. The UP.
That whole place is covered with it.
Yeah. So where they have dogman sightings up there, right?
Mm-hmm. And this right here in central Michigan, it's almost a circle. Isn't that wild?
It's a circle, not a triangle. Triangle, how corner. Circle go on for L. Sorry.
And then all across northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, most of Iowa. Yeah, these cave systems are they're everywhere. And they run right through the states that have the most sightings.
Shocker.
I'm stunned.
Yeah. That's pretty interessante.
Papa Will, thank you for subscribing to the channel. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. You know, this is just the cave systems and the surface geography we're talking about. If the terrain shapes movement, then the next question is simple. Where does that movement concentrate? And when we overlay the terrain with the disappearance clusters and the sighting hotspots, the picture gets even clearer and a little more unsettling. Robbie, you want to take us into the hotspots and missing?
Sure. Patterns don't lie. People lie. Memories lie. Stories lie.
Thermal don't lie.
Thermal don't lie.
Thermal don't lie.
But patterns, real, measurable, repeatable patterns, those are the closest things we have to truth in wilderness investigations. And when you look at the map of North America through the lens of the missing 411 clusters, Bigfoot sightings, unexplained auditory encounters, and terrain-based choke points, a pattern emerges, and it's impossible to ignore. This segment begins with a map, not a corridor map, well, not yet, but a raw cluster map of missing 411 cases across the United States. The Sierra Nevadas, the Great Smoky Mountains, the Colorado Rockies, the Adirondacks, the Pacific Northwest, the Ozarks, the Black Hills, the Idaho Panhandle, and the Bitterroots. We've talked about every one of those at some point or another.
Sure have.
Yep.
These clusters have been documented for decades. They're not new, they're not speculative, and they're not on the fringe. They're real. And when you overlay those clusters with the BFRO sightings data from 95 to 2025, something startling happens. The clusters start to line up. And, you know, we started this, like DA both said, about 3 years ago. We started piecing this together. They don't line up perfectly because nothing in nature lines up perfectly, but it's close enough that the overlaps demand an explanation.
Right.
This is where the theory begins to evolve on this show years ago, like I just said. When we first compared missing 411 clusters with Bigfoot sighting hotspots, at the time we didn't have a corridor theory, at least not yet. We didn't have the acoustic data. We didn't have the cave overlays. All we had was suspicion that these places where people vanished without a trace and the same places where people saw something large, quiet, and intelligent has been reported for generations. But the more that the more data that was added, the stronger the pattern became. And we started piecing these things together. So let's start with the Smoky Mountains. The Great Smoky Mountains have one of the highest concentrations of missing 411 cases in the eastern United States. They also have one of the highest concentrations of Bigfoot sightings, wood knock reports, and unexplained auditory encounters. Search and rescue logs from 2001 to 2022 include references to echoes that answered back, heavy bipedal movement, and unidentified vocalizations in the same hollers where people's disappearances have occurred. This isn't folklore, this is documented. Now look at the Pacific Northwest, the Cascades, and the Olympic Peninsula from a near continuous chain of missing 411 cases stretching from Northern California to British Columbia. These are the same forests where timber crews, hunters, hikers have all reported large bipedal silhouettes, tree breaks, and metallic pops for decades. The BFRO data shows dense clusters in the same valleys where people vanish. Again, we see the patterns. Then there's the Rockies, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, the spine of the continent. Missing 411 clusters run along the same drainage systems where Bigfoot sightings concentrate. Ranger reports from Rocky Mountain National Park describe unexplained tracking anomalies, footprints that start and stop abruptly, as if something stepped on the stone and vanished. SAR teams report auditory mimicry, whistles, knocks, and calls that seem to follow searchers through the timber. Then there's the Ozarks. Ozarks are a little different, which anybody that's been a fan of this show for a little while will know that. They're older, more eroded, and more complex. The Ozark Plateau is one of the most geologically fractured regions in North America. It's a maze of sinkholes, caves, ravines, and hollers, and it has a missing 411 cluster that has never been fully explained. A cluster that overlaps almost perfectly with the Bigfoot sightings, unexplained auditory encounters, and ranger reports of large, silent movement in the deep hollows. This is where the corridor theory began to crystallize. Because when you overlay the missing 411 clusters with the terrain-based movement corridors from segment 1, the picture becomes clearer. The clusters sit on top of the corridors, not beside them, not near them, on them. And when you add the cave systems, the underground networks that run beneath the surface, the alignment becomes even more precise. This is where logic becomes unavoidable. If something is using terrain-based corridors to move along the landscape, if those corridors overlap with the cave systems, if the cave systems run beneath the missing 411 clusters, and if the sightings, sounds, and encounters all occur in the same place, wait for it, then the simplest explanation is that all these phenomena are connected by the same underlying structure, the land itself. Not portals, not dimensions, not supernatural forces, geology, biology, and behavior. Missing 411 clusters are not random, they're not evenly distributed, and they're not scattered across the map. They occur in places where the terrain funnels movement, where the caves run deep, and where ravines echo, and where something large and intelligent could move unseen. This isn't proof of anything supernatural. It's not evidence of abduction. This is not confirmation of any fringe theory. This is a pattern that suggests these places where people vanish are the same places where something else is moving. Something that knows the land better than we do, something that uses terrain to its advantage, something that avoids detection by staying in places where humans are most vulnerable. The hotspots matter, the clusters matter, and the overlap matters. Because when you follow the clusters, you follow the corridors. And when you follow the corridors, you begin to understand the structure of the land beneath. This is the second piece of the puzzle, the second constant, the second undeniable factor in the theory. The hotspots aren't just places where people vanish. They're places where the land itself changes, where the terrain, the caves, and the corridors all converge. And that convergence is the key to everything that follows.
Yeah, let me zoom in on that. There's your missing 411 clusters, along with these corridors. And if you look, blue zone, yellow zone, red zone. Your red zones are your high-risk hotspots where we see all the activity. The blue zone is a vast subterranean network. The yellow zones are the transitional areas. Look at a lot of these places where those transitional areas and that blue zone and even the red zones are popping up. All down in the area where Greg House has had his activity, all through LBL, all through Missouri, all through basically most of the Midwest. And when you look at all the red area, how many disappearances are in the Smokies?
A lot. I think it was the highest concentration.
There's still parts of Smoky Mountain National that are closed
because of bears.
You reckon it's that same bear that went in that dude's trailer down in Florida?
Yeah, same bear.
He took a vacation.
Same one.
Yeah, he wanted to go to the beach.
Went to visit some cousins in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. Huh.
But straight down the Pacific coast, on the Pacific Northwest, through the Cascade Mountains, look at all that red.
Yeah, we got a couple of spots out here close to me.
Yeah.
I mean, even out on the eastern plains, damn near, man. If you look at that one up on the going northeast, yeah, that's pretty far out on the freaking plains, right there. So, yeah, and that one in the middle, that one red hot spot in the middle, that's dang near Pikes Peak region, right out here.
That's pretty close to Denver, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's probably on the outside of that. But I mean, around outside Denver, you got Golden, and you head right into the foothills of the Rockies right there. So Golden, Morrison, where Red Rocks Theater is, or Amphitheater, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's right there.
And I find it kind of interesting that the Bigfoot sightings and the 411 clusters are literally lining up. I mean, we couldn't have overlaid this better ourselves. This is just the way it is. And then you look up here, minor cave systems and sinkholes. Well, major cave systems and sinkholes. What's that run through? Right through the Bitterroot area. Right there. And then there's the Cascades. And we get over here, we've got major cave systems that run all through this area. Of course, we've already looked at that on the USGS too. But then you check in the sinkholes, and it just gets nasty big. But this area is where we get to really kind of explore what they are. The red are granite, blue karst topography and limestone, and the yellow are volcanic areas. Of course, we all know there's a lot of volcanic area here and here, but there's a lot up here too, especially in the Mount St. Helens area.
Oh, and they're in Yellowstone.
Mm-hmm. Well, the whole Yellowstone area is a giant caldera.
I mean, yeah, the Yellowstone Lake is nothing but a caldera. If that place ever blows, I'm going to be wiped off the map.
Most of us will.
Yeah.
Most of North America will join you.
Yeah.
We might live a couple seconds longer, but that's about all it's going to be.
Be mighty warm.
So this pattern, it's consistent, it's measurable, and repeatable, and clearly not random.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And the terrain corridors we first talked about, they line up perfectly with the missing 411 clusters.
I'll be right back.
All right, heavily influenced terrain heavily influences these movement patterns.
Yep.
might have time to get into the next segment. We still got 15 minutes before. You want to lead us into the next segment?
Sure thing. Let me hang on. My phone's being goofy right quick. So if the hotspots show us where the activity concentrates, then the next step is understanding how those places connect. Because once you map those clusters onto the terrain, a larger structure begins to emerge. A structure made of zones, pathways, and corridors that span the entire continent. DA, take us into segment 3.
All right. In this segment, we're going to talk about, as he said, the zones and corridors. Patterns tell you where something is happening. Corridors tell you how it moves. And the zones, they tell you why it behaves the way it does. So this segment begins with the map, not the missing 411 clusters, but not the terrain funnels, but the slowly combined overlay. And let me bring that map right back up real fast before I continue too much farther. Let me bring that map back up because I definitely want you guys to see those corridors. Because this is the segment where we're really going to be talking about these corridors in white. So with that in mind, where was I? Oh yeah. The moment y'all see this, the structure becomes undeniable. The sightings, the disappearances, the auditory encounters, the terrain choke points, and the cave systems all fall into a series of repeating shapes. Those shapes form zones, and you can see those zones on the map. Those zones are connected by corridors, and those corridors form a continental network. This idea didn't appear overnight. It's evolved slowly, piece by piece, across the last few years of episodes. Back a couple of years ago, when we first noticed that the sightings seemed to cluster in bands rather than isolated dots. Later, we discussed how the terrain funneled movement into predictable pathways. But not long ago, we introduced the idea of behavioral territories, areas where encounters spike seasonally, and recently, we mentioned the possibility of long-range movement patterns. This is where all those threads come together. The blue zone, the heart of the network. The blue zone is the largest and most active and most consistent region in the entire data set. It stretches from the Ozarks through the Appalachians up into the Alleghenies and down into northern Georgia and Alabama. It's the densest overlap of Bigfoot sightings from the BFRO, the missing 411 clusters, cave systems from the USGS Karst survey of 2024, terrain corridors, internal mapping, and acoustic encounters which we got from search and rescue logs, ranger reports, and field recordings. The blue zone isn't a hotspot, it's a habitat. A continuous multi-state region where the terrain, the geology, and the ecology create ideal conditions for something large, intelligent, and elusive to move, feed, shelter, and stay unseen. This is where the corridor theory becomes more than speculation. It becomes the simplest explanation for the data. Then you look at the yellow zones. Those are the transitional corridors. The yellow zones are the connective tissue of the network. They're the long, narrow bands of terrain that link the major clusters together. Those include the Missouri to Kentucky corridor, the Tennessee to North Carolina corridor, the Arkansas to Oklahoma corridor, the Idaho to Montana corridor, and the Northern California to Oregon corridor. These aren't habitats, they're movement pathways. They're the places where the sightings spike briefly, then vanish. Where tracks appear for a day and then just stop. Where search and rescue reports have shadowing movement during searches. And where hunters hear knocks or pops that seem to travel through the timber. These are the highways, the routes something uses to move between major zones. And when you overlay the cave system, the alignment becomes even more precise. The yellow zones sit directly on top of karst belts, limestone corridors, lava tube systems, ravine networks, and subterranean drainage paths. This ain't a coincidence. This is a structure. And the red zones, that's your high-risk convergent points. The red zones are the smallest but most important part of this map. These are the places where the missing 411 cases cluster tightly, sightings spike dramatically, acoustic encounters intensify, terrain funnels movement into narrow choke points, and the cave systems converge beneath the surface. Perfect examples of this are the Mark Twain National Forest, the Great Smoky Mountains, the Klamath River Basin in California and Oregon, the Bitterroot Range, which we talked about with the Teddy Roosevelt episodes in Idaho and Montana, the Black Hills of South Dakota. These are not random danger zones. They're convergence points, places where multiple corridors intersect, where the terrain forces moving into tight channels, and where the underground systems create natural bottlenecks. If something is using the subterranean network to move across the continent, these are the places where it would surface most often and where humans would most likely encounter it. And this is where the theory gets unavoidable. The continental corridor network. When you connect the blue zones, the yellow zones, and the red zones, we see a continental structure emerging. A central habitat right there in the blue region, multiple long-range pathways across the yellow, and high-activity convergent points in red. It's not a random scatter of sightings. It's not a collection of isolated incidents. It's a network shaped by terrain, geology, hydrology, ecology, and behavior. And when you add the cave systems, the subterranean highways beneath the surface, the network becomes even more identified. And I will zoom back out so you can see all of that at one time.
So what you're saying is this is based all in science.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of the show. I mean, we're trying to present as much scientific evidence for this on how these things can exist.
Who knew?
Right. Right. The sightings aren't random. The disappearances aren't random. The sounds aren't random. The land itself is the structure. The zones and corridors aren't theories. They are the visible outline of something much deeper, something that's been moving across this continent long before humans ever tried to map it. This is the third pillar of the corridor theory, the moment where the pattern becomes a system, the moment where the system becomes a network, and the moment where the network becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Boys, what do you guys think?
I think it just goes to solidify what we've been talking about for the past 3 years or more.
I mean
Dr. Sharp's got a good question. He said, could the blue zone be the result of the New Madrid quake, forcing migration paths above ground in detour because of the New Madrid damage until they can find a way back in? I would say subterranean earthquakes would certainly affect it.
That's something I didn't think about that, because that was one of my teachers was alive. Well, she's still alive, but she lived up in Ripley, Mississippi when that New Madrid quake. Sorry.
No worries, brother.
My freaking.
John O'Stain says, when I think of the 411 mystery, I recall National Park and Forest Rangers warning me never to go into the deep woods alone and unprotected. Said they hide groups of bad people living off the grid, which is entirely possible, but it's not the only thing that's hiding out there.
That Dr. Sharp had a good point, though. I mean, I didn't think about, because if something collapses, that's going to force a detour, right? It's like going down I-70 here in Colorado, and they got a big rock slide across the road. You got to find
here in Springfield, because of all the road construction, the closest path between point A and point B is always closed.
Yeah.
We're coming back from Kentucky and I-40 being closed.
Yeah.
Every time.
We got about 6 minutes till we got to stop, but we still got plenty to talk about here. Clearly, let me bring that map back up again. Let me do that once more, because this just really proves our point. The corridor theory explains long-range movement without adding any mysticism. How these things can be all across the country, and not as many places are reporting sightings. The terrain, the caves, the sightings, and the clusters, that's the continental structure.
Mm-hmm.
And these sightings are following that structure.
Kay Bowers had a really good comment. He said, just a thought, with this and all of the underground cities and highways humans are building, encounters would go up significantly. You started living there, ?
I would say so. Yeah. If you built a house right in the middle of one of these zones, you'd probably have significant encounters at your property. And that would explain why why House has so much activity, because not only is his place right there in one of these yellow zones that you can see, it's also right close to major clusters of sinkholes and red areas where these sightings are being at these clusters of sightings.
Yeah.
These maps were constructed using the USGS karst belts and ravine systems, and all of the data from the missing 411, from Bigfoot sightings, and from the USGS went into constructing these maps. So it's really the backbone of the subterranean superhighway concept, and it's, once you look at it, it's impossible to ignore.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
And I bet if we had, well, let me just see if I can find it. I'm going to search for something. I got a couple minutes here.
Let me look at that thing bigger.
Hold on, I'm trying to find something here.
One of them walkways, if they're going through North Mississippi, one of those routes, that's going right through where that New Madrid Fault is.
Yeah.
If y'all look at that up near North Mississippi.
Let me
explain some of the stuff we talked about with that certain individual in LBL too, Doc.
That is correct, sir. Because that ain't far down the line, Robbie. That ain't far down the line at all.
Let me bring up something here. I think you guys will find this kind of interesting. Right here. You know what those are?
Lines.
Wildlife migration paths.
Well,
what are they following? The Cascade Range, crossing through the Bitterroots, over here through Yellowstone, coming down through the Rockies, heavily through the Rockies, and going up across the Gulf Coast. And where's that? Right smack in that blue zone.
And look, hey, check out the eastern seaboard.
Oh, yeah. So those cave systems follow migration paths. And the sightings, the heavy sighting areas, parallel the migration paths.
Yep.
Follow the food.
Follow the food.
We said that there. We said that for many years. I do believe. N4UPD, Taylor, Mississippi is a hotspot. I've got to visit that area. Robbie, that ain't far from you, because that's North Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Not far at all.
Well, y'all, we have got to take a short pause. Pay the bills, as Race is fond of saying. So, folks, we will be right back. It's a great opportunity for y'all to, get a cup of coffee, grab a snack, walk the dog, fold the clothes, whatever you need to do, restart the dryer, and we will be back with you guys in just a few minutes.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. 2026 is off to a great start, and it's almost time. With many exciting predictions and the recent emphasis on a potential major planetary event occurring in April, it promises to be a super transformational month. And we couldn't be more excited to be in Hawaii during this shift to integrate new frequencies. Folks, this will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. April the 20th through the 24th, 2026. Join us in Kona, Hawaii for Journey to Truth's very first vacation conference retreat. Enjoy 9 presenters over 5 days with ocean adventures with dolphins and whales and sacred sites and so much more. Experience Hawaii like never before. You will enjoy 5 days on the Big Island, so don't wait. Start planning your trip today at journeytotruth.online. That's journeytotruth.online. The paranormal field is changing, and now, more than ever, it's time for professionals to lead the way. Join the Oz Professional Paranormal Investigators Association, a global network of serious investigators dedicated to raising the standard of real paranormal research. Access professional certifications, advanced training, and courses exploring true investigation, psychic phenomena. If you're a real paranormal investigator, be a part of the group defining the future. Join today. Visit ozinstitute.org. That's ozinstitute.org.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
In a world where monsters still walk the earth, one author dares to face them. From the brutal cryptid horror of the Apex Predator series to the Ozark legends that stalk the night in Lakeview Man, from the elite warriors of codename Wild Hunt to the relentless investigations of the Nightmare Hunter and the frontier terror of Dark Frontiers. When the Dead Rise, the Ragnarok Rising saga unleashes pure zombie apocalypse fury. And across the stars, war rages in the Lost Legion and Man's Marauders. And in the realm of myth and steel, the world of Vanguard calls to those born for legend. Cryptids, zombies, sci-fi warfare, epic fantasy. This is the universe of D.A. Roberts.
And we are back, folks. Thank you guys for sticking with us through that. And we're going to jump right back into this. So if the zones and corridors show us the structure of the surface, then the next step in understanding is what lies beneath it. Because the real key to this entire network isn't just the terrain above the ground. It's the world below it. Doc?
So the world below, we've been talking about this for a long time. This is the cave theory. So if the zones and corridors show us the structure on the surface, then the caves are going to show us the structure beneath it, that hidden world that ties everything together. And this segment begins underground, not in the fantasy sense, not in the mystical sense, but in the real physical geological world beneath North America, a world mapped out by the USGS, explored by the cavers, documented in karst surveys. That latest one that DA was talking about was in 2024, and recorded in hydrological studies going back decades. Now, the United States has one of the most extensive cave systems on this earth. It's not just the Mammoth Cave, not just Carlsbad, but thousands upon thousands of miles of karst tunnels, limestone corridors, lava tubes, subterranean rivers, sinkhole networks, collapse chambers, vertical shafts, hidden entrances, abandoned mines. You name it, we got it. And the more you study these systems, the more you realize something startling. The cave systems align with the zones and corridors from segment 3. It's not speculation. It's not theory. This is cartography. This is simple map making. If you ever seen Starman with Jeff Bridges, I make maps. So that is it. This is cartography. They're making, this is a map. And the Ozarks are one of the ones that they call this one the Underground Empire because it's got more than 10,000 documented caves, not counting the caves. How many do you think out there is out there that's undocumented, y'all?
Way more than's documented, I guarantee you.
Right. Infinite. And so, with estimates suggesting the real number is far, far higher. The region is a Swiss cheese of limestone, dolomite, and karst formations beneath the hills and hollows, and lies a labyrinth of tunnels, chambers, and underground waterways. Now, this is where the cave theory first emerged on this show, when we had discussed the strange consistency of sightings near cave entrances and sinkholes and collapsed ravines. And at that time, it was just an observation. But then when we started overlaying, just like we literally just talked about, when we started overlaying these cave maps with the sighting data, that alignment was impossible to ignore because the sightings cluster near cave mouths and sinkholes, subterranean river outlets, karst windows, abandoned mine shafts, bluff shelters, and when you add the missing 411 on top of those clusters, on top of those other clusters, that alignment gets even tighter. And this isn't coincidence. This is structure, and we've been talking about that for years. And now with these maps, we can actually see the geographical evidence of that theory being proven. And the Appalachians, or Appalachians, however you want to pronounce it, the eastern spine consists of some of the oldest cave systems in North America over there where Robbie lives. And so the limestone belts running from Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia form a nearly continuous underground network. I mean, there was even that girl, and they were on a USGS survey team. They got run out, and she got chased, and she ended up in clear over in Kentucky, I believe, from Tennessee.
No, northern Georgia. Northern Georgia.
Okay, yeah, so she was underground for like a week. And so this region includes the Mammoth Cave, the largest cave system on Earth, the Fisher Ridge Cave System, the Cumberland Plateau Karst Belt, the Greenbrier Valley Cave Networks, and the Tag region. That's Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, which is home to thousands of vertical pits. These are not isolated caves. These are corridors, long, winding, interconnected pathways that run beneath the surface for miles. And when you overlay the blue zone from segment 3, that matches nearly perfect. Now, if you head up the Pacific Northwest, you got the lava tubes because of the extensive lava tube. It's home to some of the most extensive lava tube systems in the world because of the old ancient volcanic flows that formed them. They create these long, straight, stable tunnels that can run for miles beneath those forests. Some examples we have are the Ape Cave in Washington, Lava Beds National Monument in California, the Bend lava tubes up in Oregon, and then the Mount St. Helens tube systems. Now, these tubes run directly beneath some of the densest Bigfoot sighting clusters in the regions. And again, we see the pattern. Now, the Rockies, they call this the hidden drainage systems, and they contain fewer large caves, but they contain something just as important, subterranean drainage systems. These are long, narrow tunnels carved by water over thousands of years, forming hidden pathways beneath the surface. Search and rescue teams in Colorado and Montana have reported unexplained voids beneath certain valleys, places where ground-penetrating radar shows hollow spaces that, imagine this, they don't appear on any map. So these will align with sighting corridors, missing 411 clusters, and acoustic hotspots. So this is where the cave theory becomes unavoidable and allows Bigfoot to be the hide-and-seek champion of the world. The logic of the cave theory is that if there's something large, something intelligent, and something elusive that exists in North America, something that avoids humans, moves silently, and appears unpredictably, then these cave systems offer the perfect explanation for how it remains unseen. So caves provide shelter. They provide temperature stability. They provide concealment, escape routes, long-range movement pathways, acoustic advantages, protection from weather, protection from predators, and more importantly, protection from us, people. The caves connect also, even furthermore, the zones and corridors into one single unified network. And this is the heart of the cave theory. Not that Bigfoot lives in caves full time, but not that it is subterranean by nature, but that it uses the cave systems the same way we use highways to move long distance, to avoid detection, and to travel between resource zones. Because that map that DA just pulled up there with all the migratory routes. Also, they shelter there during storms. They hide their young. They want to protect them. and they want to evade those predators, namely, us. This isn't a supernatural thing. This is not an interdimensional thing. Nothing's disappearing and going through vortices and things like that. It's not mystical. This is behavioral ecology. This is how they survive. This is how they survive for as long a time as they have. Large mammals use underground structures all the time. Bears den in caves, cougars shelter in rocks, overhangs. Wolves use abandoned mine shafts. Hyenas use caves in Africa. Leopards drag their kill in the caves. Baboons shelter in caves during storms. And for Bigfoot to exist, a large intelligent primate as it is, it would use caves too. Now, that underground superhighway, when you connect all of these things, the terrain corridors, the missing 411 clusters, the sighting hotspots, the acoustic encounters, and the cave systems, you get one single coherent structure, which is the subterranean highway beneath America. So it's a network of underground pathways that allows something to move across the continent without being seen. So this is the fourth pillar of our corridor theory, the moment where the surface map becomes a three-dimensional system. This is the moment where system becomes a habitat. This is the moment where the habitat becomes a network of movement, behavior, and survival. The caves aren't a mystery. They're the answer. So what do y'all think about that, fellas?
Well, like you were saying, the U.S. has one of the largest cave systems on Earth. And it was in Vietnam or Laos where they found that cave that was so deep, it had its own ecosystem.
Yeah, you could fly 747 through that thing.
Which fits right into our theory about, not the hollow Earth, but the honeycombed Earth theory. Mm-hmm. Riddled with massive caverns like that could support their own ecosystem. And we know from bioluminescence and the high nutritional value of certain mushrooms, it's entirely possible something could live completely subterranean that we're not aware of.
Yeah, and wouldn't it stand to reason that if they're traveling these routes underneath there, I mean, they're going to have access to food sources that we don't know about, like you just said.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's going to be food under there. There's going to be critters under there.
Not to mention cave fish, cave crawfish. We've seen those found by cavers before. They're completely almost translucent. They're so white they don't even have eyes because they live in total darkness. There's any number of food sources down there. Lichens, bioluminescence is a thing, so it may not be total darkness down there.
Yeah, well, and Serenity's Gate's got a good point. They said I'd be curious to see how they connect to Canada.
I'm sure they do. But the only one I've got actual connection data into is the migration paths. The migration paths definitely go to Canada. So if the migration paths are going, it's kind of safe to assume the rest does as well.
Yeah, I mean,
I just have no data. All my cave data comes from the U.S. Geological Survey, and they don't keep data on Canada and Mexico, unfortunately.
And wouldn't y'all think? Either one of y'all, wouldn't y'all think that heads up like the Pacific Northwest area, like through British Columbia, like we've talked about?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because just because there's a Canadian border there doesn't mean that same type of topography stops. Because just over in British Columbia, it's almost indistinguishable from the Pacific Northwest.
Right. Correct.
Well, like you were saying, Doc, when you were talking about baboons and other animals using the caves, if known animals use the caves, why wouldn't cryptids?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if other animals are using the caves, well, and if you're a cryptid, there's another food source right there, right?
Exactly, it sure is.
Yep.
I mean, it only makes sense because even our ancestors used caves. Caves provide shelter, concealment, and clearly long-range capability of movement.
Yeah, well, Cajun Dog just said, look at the moonshiners during Prohibition, all the bootleggers.
They went below ground.
Any cave system they could find, I mean, they'd have a still in there, and they'd use that rock to help diffuse the smoke so nobody could tell what it is cooking.
Yep. So at this point, I really think that this is one of the most solid theories we've ever put forward. Because it's really combining a lot of the theories we've built up over the last 3 or 4 years. and we're going to keep on that trend. Because if something is using the underground network to move across the continent, then the next question is simple: how does it navigate in the dark? And the answer leads us to one of the most controversial and most biologically plausible theories we've ever discussed. And Robbie can tell you firsthand. We've discussed this theory with some pretty big names in this field, and with the exception of one dude who will remain nameless, who was kind of an a-hole, everybody was spot on board with it. Like, yeah, that makes absolute sense. This guy was one of those people that believes only his theories make sense and everybody else can just go away. I won't name any names, but some of you who were with us at a certain convention here in the Midwest will know exactly who I'm talking about. So, Robbie, you want to take us into the next segment?
Navigation, underground, and the tonguepop theory. If something is using subterranean networks to move across the continent, then the next question is unavoidable. How's it navigate in the dark? Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. Because the underground world is not forgiving, it's not open, it's not illuminated, and it's not safe. It's a world of total darkness, narrow passages, sudden drops, vertical shafts, flooded chambers, dead ends, echo chambers, and collapsed tunnels. And yet the cave systems beneath North America are extensive enough and interconnected enough that something could theoretically move through them for miles, if not hundreds of miles, but only if it had a way to navigate. This is where the tonguepop theory emerges. Not as speculation, not as fantasy, but as a logical extension of everything we've built so far. The problem of underground navigation. Humans can't navigate caves without light, maps, ropes, markers, teams, training, all the stuff that we have to have. Even then, experienced cavers die every year. So how would a large, intelligent primate navigate these systems? It wouldn't rely on vision, it wouldn't rely on smell, and it wouldn't rely on just memory alone. This is where the acoustic data becomes critical. The acoustic clues. Across decades of reports, ranger logs, SAR accounts, hunter encounters, and BFRO submissions, one sound appears again and again. What they call wood knocks, maybe something else entirely. A sharp tongue pop. Not a wood knock, not a vocalization, not a whoop, not a click. A sound described as like snapping your tongue off the roof of your mouth. Like a dolphin click, but deeper. Like someone popping their cheek, like a rock tapping metal, or like a knuckle crack echoing through the trees. These reports come from the Ozarks, the Smokies, the Cascades, the Rockies, the Adirondacks, and the Klamath Basin. Different regions, different ecosystems, but the same sound. And when you map the locations, these click encounters, they align with cave entrances, ravine systems, karst windows, sinkholes, and subterranean drainage paths. This is where the theory becomes unavoidable. Echolocation in nature. Echolocation is not rare, it's not exotic, and it's not supernatural. It's a biological adaptation used by bats, dolphins, whales, oilbirds, swiftlets, shrews, tensors, some primates.
Tarsiers and eyes.
Yeah, what he said.
Specifically.
What he said, I was with you, Robbie.
And in every case, the mechanism is the same. A sharp, broadband click that reflects off surfaces and returns information. The sharper the click, the clearer the echo. The clearer the echo, the better the navigation. This is where the tongue pop theory becomes biologically plausible. The tongue pop as a navigation tool. If Bigfoot is what we believe, a large, intelligent primate adapted to both forests and subterranean environments, then a tongue-generated click will be a perfect tool for navigating caves, mapping chambers, detecting obstacles, locating openings, identifying water sources, avoiding drops, tracking movement, and communicating at a distance. And the reports support this. We've discussed the pop heard by hunters in the Ozarks, the sound that seemed to scan the environment. And we've also covered SAR teams in the Smokies who reported clicks that echoed back differently depending on where we stood. We've even analyzed the audio from the Washington Cascades, a series of pops that increased in frequency as something moved through the ravine. These aren't random noises. They aren't vocalization. They're tools. The underground advantage. In total darkness, echolocation offers several advantages. It works without light, works around corners, works in tight spaces, it works in flooded chambers, it works in branching tunnels, and it works effectively. And most importantly, it works in caves. This is the missing piece of the subterranean superhighway theory. The caves provide the structure, the corridors provide the pathways, the zones provide the habitat, but the tonguepop provides the navigation. The behavioral evidence. Witnesses often describe the pops as rhythmic, intentional, directional, increasing in frequency when movement occurs, decreasing when the creature stops, echoing differently depending on the terrain. This is exactly how echolocation works in other species. Dolphins increase click frequency when approaching obstacles. Bats change click patterns when entering tight spaces. Or birds use slower clicks in open chambers and faster clicks in narrow passages. The parallels are striking. The logical conclusion? If something is using subterranean networks to move across the continent, if the navigating caves, ravines, and underground corridors, if it's avoiding humans with a near perfect efficiency, if it is adapted to darkness and silence, then echolocation by a tongue-generated pop isn't just plausible, it's necessary. This is the fifth pillar of the corridor theory. The moment where behavior meets biology, the moment where biology meets genealogy, and the moment where the entire system becomes functional. The tongue pop is not a mystery, it's a tool, a biological adaptation to a subterranean world. And once you understand that, the final piece of the puzzle comes into focus. The realistic biological picture of Bigfoot itself.
And when Robbie and I demonstrated the tongue pop at the Gatlinburg Bigfoot conference, it stopped the entire room. Everybody turned and looked to see what that was.
Well, I mean, I remember that night you did it out at Moon Valley. And, dude, it echoed. It was loud.
Now imagine that in a confined space like a cave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Y'all remember that show? It had Stan Lee as was the host.
This is where the theory started, Doc, is where you're going with that.
The real life superheroes with that blind dude.
That rode the bicycle course, clicking and popping and navigating the course.
Bingo.
You weren't on that show, but that's the show where DA and I started forming this theory. We talked about that very episode of that, where he taught himself to echolocate, basically. And that's what we postulated. If he can teach himself to do it, why can't they do it?
Correct, man. And if we've talked about this with the eye shine, with tapetum lucidum, well, that's a primitive night vision, right? So if it only rebounds and reflects existing light, and if there ain't no existing light, 0 plus 0 is still 0. So
I'm with you there, Doc. I think Bigfoot and probably to some degree Dogman just have a thicker layer of tapetum lucidum than in a lot of species because, again, I think they spend a big chunk of their time below ground.
Yeah. Abnormal investigations. We're actually talking about a real person, not Daredevil. I mean, Daredevil, the dude did it. His character did that, but this cat was like a real life Daredevil.
He taught himself to ride a bicycle, and he was completely blind from birth.
Yeah,
he rode around clicking his tongue, and he
navigated an obstacle course.
And he completely navigated it.
When I watched that blew me away. I was like, "Holy crap!" So I mean, if they're moving around underground in pitch darkness, like Lone Queen said, if there's some bioluminescence, they can pick that up and probably use that to adjust and see. But if it's pitch black, they're going to have to find their way through there.
Bioluminescence is probably not going to be everywhere in every single, tunnel.
Correct.
And
right.
So when it's there, great, they can use it. But when it's not, they got to have another way.
Bingo. Yeah. And they ain't
It's
gonna
just a
quit on-
natural adaptation.
Yeah.
So, wood knocks would still work above ground, just not as effective.
Right.
With
And
tongue pops. When I say wood knocks, I mean tongue pops.
well, and let's look at it from the let's play devil's advocate here for a second. Let's say, okay, it is a stick they're using to hit trees with. Or are they walking down through these caves with a shillelagh and rapping on stuff?
I don't think so.
I wouldn't think so.
And Robbie's made this point before, and I'll give him credit for it, but he's absolutely right. I've picked up big, like meaty looking sticks in the woods before off the ground and whacked them against a tree, and 9 times out of 10 they just explode. They're already started to rot when they're on the ground. They just come apart. They don't make a good thumping sound. They just break.
Yeah, and as big as a Bigfoot is, I'm pretty sure they'd turn it into kindling real quick.
Well, Doc, that night we were out there when we had the earphones on. We did that. I did that click, and we got an almost immediate response. It was just way down the valley. So it's like like you're saying. I don't think he was walking around with a Louisville Slugger over his shoulder. We did a click. He did it right back, which means he either, for example, had the Louisville Slugger over his shoulder, or had the ability to just make the noise right back.
Yeah, he had his tongue already there.
So I think the tongue pop theory actually holds more water than the wood knock theory.
Oh, I do too. I remember the first time you did that, I was like, holy crap. Man.
Cajun Dog says, what about a dog man's whiskers? Wouldn't they work like a wolf and help feel it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That would just be their own adaptation. They'd be born with them. So, yeah, they would probably have the same instincts as any other canid.
Yeah. I don't know. Kevin has a good point. No proof of damaged bark on trees.
Right. I've never once seen destroyed bark on trees where, heavy wood has been smacked into the side of it. I don't remember ever seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, and about the only damage you would see on trees like that on bark is if you got a big deer population and they got some
Scrapes.
Some scrapes scraping on the trees. So, or rubbing on the trees, getting that velvet off. So,
I rounded a corner in a trail one time down in Arkansas, and I heard a grunt, like I heard it was a bear. Like, ooh, ooh. I'm like, what's that bear doing? I rounded the corner, and the bear was hunkered over with his butt up against a tree, scratching his ass on the tree. And I was like, I think I'll leave him be, and backed up and went the other direction. He's getting with it too. I don't know if he was getting ticks off or what, but he was really digging in there.
Have y'all seen the one where the bear was scratching himself and some kind of wire or something come up and smacked him right in the
I saw that one.
in the cojones?
It proves even bears don't like getting hit there.
He curled up in the fetal position. I said, that's a very human reaction.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. One of you fellers want to segue us into the next section?
Sure.
If the tongue pop explains how something could navigate the underground networks, then the final question is the one people have been asking for decades. How does this tell us about the creature itself? And when you strip away the myths, the portals, and the pseudoscience, and the biological picture that emerges is far more grounded and far more compelling than anything in the viral videos.
So if the tongue pop that does explain how something could navigate a subterranean network, then the final question is the one people have been asking decades. What does this tell us about the creature? Not the myth, not the folklore, not the viral video, the actual biology behind the creature. The version that fits the terrain, the version that fits the sightings, the version that fits the caves, the version that fits the acoustics, and the version that fits the behavior. This segment begins with a simple premise. For Bigfoot to exist, it must obey the laws of biology. It has to eat, it has to drink, it has to reproduce, it has to migrate, it has to have shelter, it has to avoid other predators, it has to avoid us, and it has to navigate in its environment. That means it has to adapt to the terrain. It has to survive through the winter. It has to raise its young. That means it leaves traces, even if they're rare. And when you apply those biological requirements to the zones, corridors, and cave systems that we've been mapping out tonight, a coherent picture starts to emerge. A picture far more grounded and compelling than anything in that AI study or the interdimensional theories. Body structure, built for the terrain. Witnesses descriptions across decades from the Pacific Northwest to the Appalachians to the Ozarks all remain pretty consistent. The average reported sighting, 6.5 to 9 to 10 feet. Weight, 400 to 1,000 pounds. Shoulders, broad, long, powerful arms that reach down to mid-thigh. Legs that are thick, muscular, and adapted for steep terrain. Feet that are wide, flexible, with a mid-tarsal break. And a gait that is smooth, gliding, and energy efficient. This ain't a monster. This is a mountain primate. A creature built for climbing ravines, crossing ridgelines, moving silently through the forest, navigating uneven ground, and maintaining stability even on steep slopes. This matches the terrain models we talked about in the first segment. Hair and skin, they're adapted for the climate. Reports include thick hair, dark coloration, thick dermal layers. This is consistent with animals like bears, mountain gorillas, highland primates, and cold-adapted mammals. It fits the climates of the Rockies, the Cascades, the Appalachians, and yes, the Ozarks. This matches the blue zone habitat perfectly from segment 3. The omnivorous diet. A creature this size would require a very high calorie intake, seasonal variation, and opportunistic feeding. Their diet would likely include deer, elk, moose, small game like rabbits, squirrels, possums, and other animals, fish, roots, nuts, berries, insects, carrion, mushrooms, and tubers. This matches the ecological resources of the corridor study. Behavior is avoidance as a survival strategy. Every credible sighting shares one behavioral constant. It tries to avoid humans. Not out of fear, out of strategy. Strategy? Did I say that wrong? Strategery. Strategery.
Nuclear defensification.
I are a Lebanon high school graduate. Strategy. Avoidance is a survival trait in wolves, cougars, bears, gorillas, and even orangutans. For Bigfoot to survive, it would avoid humans with near perfect efficiency, and the cave systems would make that 100% possible. This matches the cave theory. So the movement, long-range migration. The zones and corridors suggest seasonal movement, which we've noticed here in the Ozarks. When do we get more sightings? Late fall, early winter. Seasonal movement, resource-based migration, breeding territories, winter sheltering zones, and summer feeding zones. This is exactly how elk, moose, bear, and mountain lions move across the landscape. This matches the corridor network from segment 3. Navigation, echolocation as a tool. The tonguepop isn't a myth. It's not a vocalization. It's not a threat display. It's a navigational tool. If any of you've ever heard me do it live, you know I can do it a lot louder than that, and I'm just a fat guy from the hills of Missouri. Imagine something twice my body weight and mass with a much bigger chest capacity and a mouth acoustics. This is a biological adaptation for underground movement, nighttime travel, dense forest navigation, and silent communication. Not silent as in it's not making any noise, but silent as in not verbal. A tongue pop could be mistaken for a lot of things in the woods. This matches the tongue pop theory. Now we look at the social structure. Small, highly mobile groups. The data suggests solitary males, small family units, seasonal aggression, and dispersal of juveniles. This mirrors gorillas, orangutans, and bears. It explains why the sightings are rare, the tracks are inconsistent, why we have sudden disappearances, and why there's seasonal patterns. Low numbers and high intelligence would indicate their reproduction cycle. They keep it low. They would have to. A creature this intelligent and elusive likely would have a long gestation period, probably longer than us. If I recall correctly, Doc, I think a mountain gorilla actually has a longer gestation period than a human.
Don't make me lie. I know
elephants do.
Yeah.
Long gestation period, slow reproduction, high parental investment, and a low population density. And by high parental investment, mean they have to take care and nurture their children, teach them how to survive, teach them how to do the things they need to survive, just like we do with ours. And this explains why they're so rarely seen, why they're not photographed easily, why they leave very minimal amounts of evidence behind, and why they haven't been captured. So now we start to look at the biological picture when you combine it. The terrain, the hotspots, the zones, the corridors, the caves, the echolocation, the behavior, the ecology, the sightings, and the disappearances. You get a single, coherent biological model. A large, intelligent, omnivorous primate adapted to rugged terrain and subterranean environments using a continental network of natural corridors and cave systems to move across North America unnoticed. No portals, no dimensions, no magic, no mysticism. Just biology, ecology, behavior, and the land. This is the sixth and final pillar of the corridor theory. The moment where the creature stops being a legend and becomes a species. A species shaped by the land, a species hidden by the land, and a species surviving off because of the land. Once you see that picture, this all starts snapping into focus. So, Doc, you're the medical one above us, among us. Shoot. What were you saying, Robbie? Did Robbie freeze up or did I?
Oh, there he is. He's moving now.
Yeah, he froze up there for a second. What were you going to say, Robbie?
I was just going to answer your question. The gestational period for mountain gorillas is eight and a half months. Blue whales, though, are 10 to 12 months.
And something too, I just read to piggyback on to Robbie. They had their gestational period is that, but they only reproduce about every 4 to 6 years. So they have a very long period in between at times they have youngins. They usually only have one versus two as far as twins go.
That makes sense. Why they keep their numbers low.
Keep their numbers low. Yeah. And Northwood's cryptid elephants are almost 2 years. Holy crap.
So, Doc, you being the medical professional among us, for them to be a real creature, they have to fit into biology of basically every other animal on the planet. Yeah. They've got to eat, they got to sleep, they got to have kids, they got to have shelter, they got to avoid predators, and basically obey the same laws that any other animal on this planet would have to.
Yeah. They got to, and from somebody who I'm not going to say right now because we hadn't talked to him about it, but they got to poop too. So remember that, Robbie? He's talking about that.
Like that children's book, Everyone Poops.
Yeah, I mean something, and he said it's something you'd have to give an APGAR score to. That's something we relate to newborn infants. So that was a big one. And so yeah, they have the same behavioral patterns as any creature out in the woods, any living creature. Because we, as human beings, what do? We have to eat, we have to sleep, we reproduce, and all these natural things. And so that's what, and they found this. There's evidence of it. I mean, what the nests, not, I don't know if you call them nests or shelters, things like that. Even if they're not in a cave system, they find nests out in the woods. Yes, I mean where they den up and they sleep. So they're from everything I've seen and everything we've talked about on the show, they have a family unit. They have a hierarchy, just like any other creatures out there.
Any other family group of animals.
Absolutely. Another family oriented group of animals out there. They have a hierarchy. And so that's just the way they operate. Because Robbie even knows he knows a lot about aquatic animals. So, I mean, sharks and dolphins and things like that and whales. I mean, what do whales have? And
Pods.
dolphins. Pods.
Moving pods.
Yeah. So they have a designated hierarchy there. So
and imagine that killer whale pods, on males, groups of females that take care of their and nurture their young.
Yep. Where do they typically put the young when they're out in the wood, out in the water
In
swimming?
the middle.
Middle of the pond.
Right in the middle. Just like we've seen people who reported seeing juveniles. The juveniles are typically kind of in between the adults, and one adult's pulling lead and one adult's pulling drag.
Same
Me
with
too,
elephants.
Craig. I wish I
Elephants
could have
do
been
the
there.
same thing.
We'll say it again, Robbie.
I said elephants do the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sure do. So any kind of familial unit like that in nature, they all operate very similarly. I mean, what do we do is, well, what we should do as humans and what we do. Some people don't, but I mean, I always wanted to make sure my kids were in between me and the other adult. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, when the boys were little, Annette would walk on one side, I would walk on the other, and we'd hold their hand in the middle of us.
Yep. Absolutely.
Especially if we were out someplace either camping or hiking.
Yeah. So that's just science. That's just science right there. Natural flow of things.
And if the migration pattern showed us anything, they are following the herds.
Mm-hmm.
They're following the food.
Yeah, and how many years have we talked about that, Robbie?
Yeah, we've been saying that for a while.
I mean, I think that came up. I think we talked about that even before we was talking about tonguepop, weren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
been a minute.
As long as I can remember, we talked about that.
We're like, follow the food. If you want to know where they're going, follow the food source.
I think
Just
that's why we see so many of them around the lakes here, because there's so much deer and fish.
Well, just like in Blanc Road that night.
Yeah.
When Robbie was going to go shake hands with it. So, I mean, it was out there. It was probably out there noodling for a catfish or something, and we interrupted.
Might have been. Might interrupted his supper.
Yeah, who knows? Sorry, got something on the floor here. Ooh, my bad. These. Yeah, so I mean, the something else too, and we've seen this hair and skin. You talk about dense fur, the thick dermal layers, things like that. It matches anything that's adaptive to cold systems, and also if you think about this too, going down in the caves, how cool does it get down in them caves?
Stays pretty constant.
Stays pretty constant. I mean, sometimes it's like in the 50s or something down at a certain level.
Now the temperature starts rising again once you get really deep.
When you get really deep, right? But I remember, what's that cave up there in the Smokies? Ruby Falls?
Yeah, I think that's up there.
I think that's up there. I remember I had to wear a jacket in there.
Yeah, I think that is up in the Rockies.
Well, in the days of the pioneers, they used to use caves as ice houses.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, there's a tunnel up here in Oconee County called Stump House Tunnel, and it was originally a railroad that they were going to cut through, and they stopped. So they started using it to store cheese and things like that because it's a constant temperature.
Kind of like a natural root cellar.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
What more proof do you need, Richie? We've already showed the migration paths follow the caves and sighting paths,
I think
and they've got to eat.
I think Richie came in late. He might not have seen that graphic with the migration.
Okay.
Because I remember him saying, "Hey, I just got here," so I think that was after.
Let's run through the maps again then.
Yeah, we got time. We ain't pressed.
Let me bring the maps back up.
Because dude, those maps are gold, and it kind of solidifies everything we've been talking about for all these years, man.
Okay, Richie, these are the missing 411 maps overlaid with maps of known cave systems. This we've talked about on the show numerous times. This is the United States Geological Survey's map of cave systems in the United States and the different structures of the cave. So we've got cave systems that are backing up the 411. They match the 411 almost perfectly. Then we go to this. This is the map of migration patterns. It lines up with those caves. It lines up with the sightings.
Yeah.
Now, are the wildlife following the caves? Probably not. But those caves are all in areas of high traffic area and high areas of food and low areas of people.
Yep. And what have we always said? Follow the food.
Absolutely, follow the food. Now, it would make sense that, them being a living creature, they got to follow the food. The movement patterns and sighting patterns match the wildlife migration corridors. The echolocation explains the underground navigation. Social structures are very similar to large primates. Low reproduction explains the rarity. So this is a coherent biological species, not a supernatural entity. I mean, everything points to a biological animal.
And when you put all these segments together, the terrain, the hotspots, the zones, the caves, that echolocation, the biology, you get a big picture that's a lot more grounded, a lot more logical, a lot more compelling than anything in these viral videos. And where does it all come from? The land.
Absolutely. So when you step back from when you step back from the maps, when you pull away from the theories, when you look at the entire picture we've built tonight, something becomes abundantly clear. The land is telling the story. Not a supernatural story, not an interdimensional story, not the story that some viral AI study tried to pass off with graphics and buzzwords as science. No, the story the land tells is older, simpler, and far more grounded in actual facts. The story of the terrain shaping the movement. The story of hotspots forming where the land funnels life into narrow channels. The story of zones and corridors connecting those places into a continental pattern. The story of caves forming the hidden backbone beneath it all. And the story of a creature adapting to that world with tools nature has already proven work. Silence, intelligence, avoidance, and echolocation. Nothing we discuss tonight requires magic. Nothing requires portals. Nothing requires bending the laws of physics. Everything we covered tonight is rooted in geography, biology, ecology, behavior, pattern recognition, and the hard data that we've been collecting for years. And that's the part that should stay with you long after this show's over tonight. Because when you strip away the noise, and when you ignore the stupid clickbait, and when you push aside the sensationalism, you're left with a picture that's far more compelling than any of these viral videos. A picture of a large, intelligent primate using the natural architecture of North America to survive and to stay hidden. Not a monster, not a myth, not a supernatural being at all. A species, one shaped by the land. And if that's true, or even if part of this network is real, then the question is, why don't we see them more often? The question is, how have we missed them for this long? Because the simple truth is, we weren't looking in the right places. We weren't listening to the right sounds, and we weren't following the land. But now we are. This was episode 412, folks, and it's just the beginning. So if you like this kind of investigation, if you appreciate the grounded scientific approach, if you want more episodes that are built on evidence instead of sensationalism, then take a moment to like, subscribe, share, and join the channel. It helps the show, it helps the algorithm, and it helps us keep cutting through the noise to bring you the work that actually matters. Because the land still has a lot more to tell us. The corridors still have more to reveal. And the echoes beneath our feet, they're still speaking. We just have to keep listening. This was Nightmare Hunters 412, The Hidden Corridors, America's Subterranean Superhighway. So y'all stay safe out there, stay aware, and as always, keep your eyes open and your mind grounded. We appreciate each and every one of you guys being with us tonight. We're going to talk for just a minute about the good folks that support this channel and help us keep the lights on here. Doc, you want to tell us a little bit about, a little group of folks called Dark Angel Medical?
No.
I don't know about that.
Hold on a second. That's Lisa again. All right. So, if you head over to darkangelmedical.com, we're a little business with a big heart. We're trying to do good for folks, and thank you, Don. Trying to keep folks alive, and keep the blood inside the body where it belongs. And here's the thing: we have just now received, or not just now received, but just in the last couple of weeks, number 212, the save number 212. It was from a constable that I taught down in Texas. Their whole department went through. He saved the guy's life with a tourniquet after the guy cut the crap out of his leg with a chainsaw. So, word to the wise, if you're going out with a chainsaw, make sure you got some of those chaps. It's definitely a lot cheaper than an ER visit or a funeral. Same thing with our kits. It's cheap life insurance. So we sell anything from minor boo-boo kits all the way up to big major, your kits for your car, kits for your European shoulder bag, kits for your boat, kits for your RV. We sell kits for pretty much every occasion and situation, whatever your mission requirements are, we got it. And so not only that, but we also talk about the importance of training. Train. Coming up next month and in May is called Stop the Bleed Month. We're going to have a series of videos out on our YouTube channel, so y'all go check those out. We also have classes throughout the United States. Go to our website and check those out as well. And like we always say, get a kit, get trained, and be the difference, because the time chooses you. And so all of our kits are FSA, FHSA eligible. And if you ever use one of our kits to save someone's life, just let us know what you used in the kit, and we'll replace the part that you used absolutely free of charge. And that's called our Kit for Life Guarantee. So
Absolutely.
Oh,
best kits in the business, folks.
Thank you. And if you use coupon code Cryptid20, that'll take 20% off of your order. So head over to darkangelmedical.com. Thank you.
Absolutely. Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about the good folks over at Scallywag Tactical?
Scallywag Tactical, another one of our longtime affiliates, make some of the best blades that you can get a hold of. They've all time coming up with new stuff. Got new blades coming in probably at least every couple of weeks, if not earlier or sooner. Every one of us have got a plethora, like that word, Doc.
That's a good word, Jed. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Jed's been hanging around.
Did you
Doc
see we have a plethora of Scallywag Tactical?
Yes, I would say we had a plethora of Scallywag Tactical. Go check out Craig and his boys. They do an amazing job. You're not just gonna be a sale to them. You're gonna be a customer for life. I guarantee it. Once you get one, you'll want to get another one. Go check them out. Use discount code DA Roberts 10 at checkout. Get yourself 10% off. Don't think they got I don't think they're gonna bring the blemish blades back, but since they've kind of gotten bigger, they've gotten better on some of the prices too. So they do have a lot more affordable stuff. They still got their really high dollar stuff, but they've got a lot more affordable stuff on there now. So go check them out. Tell them we sent you.
Absolutely. And the last but not least is our newest one. That is the good folks over at Sigwo Arms. Sigwo Arms is here in Springfield, Missouri. They manufacture and sell firearms of all types. They machine a lot of them right there in the shop, but they do have all your favorite brands. Check them out at sigwoarms.com. Use discount code Bigfoot5 for 5% off your entire order. And if you're a veteran or a first responder, make sure you let them know, because they'll bump that up to 10%. Check them out. They've got a full line of all types of equipment. They've got whisper pickles, just suppressors, and your favorite freedom seeds as well. They make their own ammo in-house, and they've got very good deals on it. So check out sigwoarms.com. Tell them we sent you. And if you want to get the Codename Wild Hunt emblem or the Dark Frontiers logo, any of that, put on a lower or even an upper, these are the folks that have got the license to do it. So reach out to them, and they'll be happy to hook you up. And last but not least, I would like to discuss, well, the three of us are authors, and we also have one other author that is a big part of what we do. Luca T. Jacobs is a fantastic author. She's got a lot of books, like 15 or 16 now, I think. Fantastic writer. She writes in the same genre that me, Robbie, and Doc tend to, the cryptid / horror genre. She's a fantastic writer. And you can also check out this Yahoo over here. You've got what, 10 books now?
Mm-hmm.
Robbie's got 10.
Yeah.
He's cruising right along, and you can check all his books out on Amazon.com. You can check them out. Well, hopefully I'll have the other website done soon, but right now for Amazon.com, but we're working on others. And Mr. Doc is about to release his second book. His first book is in the Dark Frontiers universe. It's called Angels of the Wilderness. And what's the subtitle on that, Doc? The Vampire Diaries.
Vampire Chronicles.
Vampire Chronicles. Check out check out the Vampire Chronicles by Doc. That should be popping up in the chat. It's been popping up, periodically through the night. But you can find all of these books, including mine. And I just released one earlier last month called The Hangman's Legacy. It's a new series, Hangman's Legacy: The Mount Dora Incident. It's currently sitting at number 1 in Western horror. It's doing very well, and I appreciate each and every one of you for helping it get there, and for keeping it there. I just night before last finished Codename Wild Hunt Leviathan Down. Waiting on final cover, and then we'll have some release information. So that should be coming out very soon. There's going to be some very surprised people with this book. I think you're going to really like it, but just wait for it to come out. I think the alpha readers already know what I'm talking about, but I think you guys are going to like it. So we can find all of our books, Luca's, Robbie's, Doc's, and mine, on Amazon.com, and you can find those books in Kindle, print, and even audio formats. So check them out. You can pick up an audio book for about the cost of a cup of coffee at a certain chain that I won't mention because I'm not going to give them any free advertisement. But you can get a Vente Frappuccino Mocha monstrosity for about the same price as an audio book or a Kindle. So check them out. Hope you guys will all reach out, pick out a book, because we would sure love to have you guys reading those books. Let's help with the show as well. Get into the algorithm further. Make sure you've liked, shared, and subscribed to the channel. And if you really want to, we would love to have you as a member of the channel. Or you can check me and Robbie both out on Patreon. We would certainly appreciate your support there as well. So, folks, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We've had a wonderful time tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday because for those of you who may not have caught it last week, we are no longer going to be doing Monday Mayhem and Saturday night shows, and that's the reason behind that is just a health issue. I'm having some health issues right now, working out some deals, trying to get my medication straightened out with my doctor. And it got even better. I got a letter in the mail that said my doctor's retiring in June. So I'm like, great. So I'm going to have Doc start writing my prescriptions. But we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We hope we've given you some food for thought. Because if you're looking for stories where Bigfoot teleports or talks telepathically or beams up onto the Starship Enterprise, this is not the channel for you because we don't do any of that. We're evidence-based. Me and Robbie I'm retired law enforcement. He's current law enforcement. Doc's a medical professional as well as being a veteran. I'm a veteran. When Steve's on, he's a medical professional as well and has a background in law enforcement. So we approach everything from a very logical, very evidence-based perspective. And I think that is the only way to approach this because you simply can't explain one mystery with another. That's just how that doesn't work. If you can't explain it, it doesn't mean it's immediately supernatural. Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean there's not an explanation. And that's what we're doing is we're looking at the clues, we're examining the evidence, we're listening to the stories, and we're forming educated hypotheses based on all of these. So if you guys enjoy that kind of content, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, and let people know that enjoy this kind of content, that this is the place where they can find that without any of the supernatural, without any of the woo, without any of the all the stuff that's way out on the fringe. You're only going to find hard data here. You're only going to find real stories and real evidence. And we appreciate you guys joining us. We hope you guys will support our affiliates and check out our books. And we want to thank each and every one of you guys for being part of the Nightmare Nation. You guys are the best. We're absolutely thrilled to death to have you guys with us. And big shout out to the mods, because we have the best mods in the business. They are fantastic. Great job, everybody. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And we are going to wind this puppy down. And we will see you guys next Wednesday night. Let's take her out with a toast. I've got a little bit left in my hip flask over here. I did the toast last week. Doc, since you're with us tonight, how about you take us out with the toast? Let me put that rascal up there on the banner. There we go.
All right, this is from an old Irish drinking song called The Parting Glass. Raise them up for those not with us. But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. Slàinte mhath.
And we'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Plains, the winds are howling, saloon doors swinging, shadows growling. Three lawmen stand tough as rawhide. Yeah, Doc and DA, nothing can abide. Whiskey shots and poker faces, staring down the darkest spaces in this town where legends roam. These boys bring justice, send an evil home. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rains. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night. Jed's a howler, claws of steel. Doc's a biter, makes the devil real. But DA's a shifty one, a shape-shifting soul. Can turn to anything, takes any form, takes control. Tonight the chupacabras come to town, sucking the life from all around. But these lawmen, they ain't afraid. They'll face the darkness unafraid. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rains. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night. Full moon rises, bat wings flap, the air grows cold, a chilling trap. But these lawmen, they're ready to fight underneath the pale moonlight. Jed and Doc transform with a howl. DA shifts, becomes a night owl. Together they stand a force so strong against the evil right in the wrong. Cryptid lawmen, wild and free, hunting monsters for all to see. With silver bullets and grit of steel, they fight the darkness, make the demons squeal. From dusty canyons to moonlit plains, justice rides with wind and rains. Cryptid lawmen, a fearsome sight, standing tall against the endless night.